like
Yeah.
moving the stuff, like putting apart, so they
Yeah.
don't fall together. If
Yeah.
something need to fall.
Yeah, I think Matt just needs to pick a lane. Like either you do the non-profit thing or you go the profit route, and
Yeah.
you gotta just give one up.
Right.
You know, it's just for the betterment of.
Maybe he is
Everyone.
trying to push in the .com to get
Yeah.
more hosting, more stuff. That is the
I
direct
think that's
competition
what
to
it
the
is.
WP engine,
Yeah.
and he's trying to kill the competition.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah, no, we could talk for a long time about that.
Yeah, looks like the live stream is starting. Perfect. All right, cool. I'm gonna keep it open here. Try not to look at myself too much.
I think we need to start.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start. So,
You can go ahead.
You don't wanna say something to start?
The some start, we are already saying, like, thank you for
There you go.
thank you for being here. We are a lot, but I hope somebody is watching it. But I will open the laptop because maybe somebody in the Slack is trying to connect to see to the Slack.
Yeah.
In case I will put the laptop to here.
Yeah.
But thank you, Leroy, for coming. Leroy
Sure.
will be presenting us in regard to tweak, and I like his custom. Super at the moment. And go for it.
Thanks,
because
man.
we are.
Yeah, so this is a Twig retreat, creating scary good WordPress websites. It's the stupidest thing I could come up with. It is October, Halloween, that's why I'm dressed this way. I don't casually dress like this. But, you know, this is gonna be about WordPress templating with Twig. I'm gonna kind of go over mostly one thing that's worked for me, but I'll mention other stuff as well. And then, yeah, we'll get into it. I mean, the thing is you're probably just thinking to yourself, haven't we done this before? Now, keep it in spirit with the Halloween thing. This is a still from a movie Triangle, which I do recommend if you've never seen it. It's a pretty fun movie. I might have like spoiled something here. I don't know. You have to watch and find out. But long story short, yeah, we kind of have done this before, right? It's always like the thing is every time you go start a new site or build a new WordPress site, you're kind of just like, what can I do differently this time that makes it a better experience? You're always excited to build something new, and then eventually you're just like, oh god, I'm tired of this, please stop. I feel like Twig has allowed me to kind of be more consistent in what I build. I've gotten better with what I build, and yeah, let me dump into it some more. So, how I got into Twig in WordPress. I've been doing WordPress sites for about 13, 14 years, something like that. And for the longest time, I was building them just basically vanilla PHP, Genesis, which is garbage, other frameworks, tools, Divi, Elementor. You know, I've kind of run the gamut of the stuff out there. I started using Twig just offhand with the site. I won't get into the specifics, but you know, someone had recommended it. You know, hey, if you need to build something quick, maybe try using Twig. I said, cool, I'll check it out. I'd never really used Twig before. You know, most of my background was just straight PHP, so I never worked with any kind of PHP framework. I want to say this is probably about 2015, 2016. So I'd already been doing WordPress sites for a couple of years now. So what really sold me though was that during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, me and a colleague were tasked with building a site. We had less than 30 days to build this site, have it done and live. We had no idea what kind of content would be in it. We had no idea what the design would be. And on top of that, we were just like, I was mostly WordPress, he was mostly Drupal. We had other skills as well outside of that. But it was a thing of, quote, like, obviously we're going to go CMS route, but we don't know, there's just so many things we just don't know. And it's like, also it's COVID, so, you know, everyone's like stuck at home, what the hell do you do, kind of thing. Funny enough, prior to that, the weekend before that, when we got this bomb in our lap, I had created myself a Twig starter that kind of basically was allowed us to start building our site quickly. So the thing was nice is like we had, you know, he wasn't really much of a front-end guy, but he used Bootstrap, so we could generate Bootstrap. We could write similar code, even though we had different skill levels as far as like the kind of code we write generally, especially PHP. And if I needed to hand him something off, let's say he wrote a bunch of back-end code for the PHP stuff, I could write a bunch of front-end code for our template files. So it really allowed us to basically just kind of merge our skill set and become like one magic developer. And we got it done. We actually got it done ahead of time. Don't tell my boss, but we got it done ahead of time. And not only did we get it done ahead of time, but yeah, it was like we had this tremendous starter when we were done that we could build other sites with. So PHP frameworks in 2024. I gave this presentation originally in 2020, FYI, but 2024 I'll jump to. Funny enough, if you go to WikiLink now, it's a much smaller page than it was in 2020. I don't know what that means. I just know that stuff has fallen off, you know. And a lot of these things people probably never even heard of, but they exist. They're real. This is not ChatGPT, I promise. I highlighted at the end here Yi, Blade, Smarty, Twig, PHP Lib, because I feel like those are probably the most common ones people have heard of. But these are your PHP frameworks. You want to write not vanilla PHP, you can pretty much use these. I don't even know, yeah, Laravel's in there. So yeah, I don't want to write PHP, or I want to do something else, you can use this stuff. Joomla stuck in there, and Drupal too. I did kind of add in some CMS stuff, but whatever. You know, there might be a Pokemon name in there if you look closely, but you tell me. So this Reddit thread I found, I think, a year before this whole debacle started with my journey to Twig. It's funny enough, I think the person has deleted their account, the thread's still up, if you want to go read it. It's kind of an interesting thing to go back and read now, 4 or 5 years later. And it was just about underscores, and like, well, what do we use outside of underscores? And I think at the time, underscores was like 8 years old or something like that, quite ancient compared to most of the PHP and WordPress. And yeah, I mean, underscores is still around. I think it is still around. And now there's Tailwind-based underscores and other things, but again, like I said, it was an interesting thread to find after the fact, especially because people were recommending all sorts of stuff that, you know, would be irrelevant now. Genesis is trash. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think I'd say anything controversial by that now. Working in Genesis, which still exists today, is terrible. You mentioned Roots and Sage.
It's
Roots
terrible.
Sage, yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
The curve of
Yeah.
learning is,
Right.
is huge.
And I've never touched it. I do know that the composer-based workflow is nice on paper. It's just one of those things that it's nice on paper, but once you actually have to like do it, or you bring in a junior person, it just becomes you know, a hell of a time. And I'll talk about Craft a little bit, Craft CMS a little bit later. But God, that upgrade process in Craft and Composer, I hate so much. That you're laughing because you know what it's like. Flint WP, I completely forgot about Flint WP existed until this slide, but I think it's still around, and I think it's still maybe an active developer, I'm not sure. Elementor, Divi, Oxygen, Astra, etc., all the page builders in the world. You know, I have nothing against page builders now that I'm an old man, in my twilight years of doing WordPress development, but they do suck. I think that's just plain as day to say. Again, I don't think it's anything controversial there. Whenever people want to go to those, I do say, hey, you can, but here's all the issues you're going to run into that you're going to have to basically build around. You know, so you might solve one problem, but you gave yourself like 5 others. Accessibility, load, just horrible page load. You're basically beholden to whatever data structure this terrible builder gives you, etc. You know. And does anyone remember when like it was the hot thing to do an Elementor site and then have it be like your back end and then your front end would be, what was it, like React or something? That was like a thing for like a hot minute that I saw all over the place. And now no one does it because it's, again, terrible. But
Like Elementor with React.
Elementor backend, they build an Elementor site and then they have it feed into, I think like the WordPress API or something, feed into a React app, which would then generate your site. And it's like, cool, why? Let's make it way more complicated than it already is.
Yes, it's kind of complicated. Use Elementor in the backend and
Yeah.
then React in the front.
Yeah, or Gatsby. I think Gatsby was a more common thing, but still, it's just like, why are we making this more complicated, guys? Anyways, so that all being said, this was kind of my starting point before jumping into Timber, which at the time, and it still is a plugin, and you can still go to the repo and download it and such. It's now on 2.0 or 2 something, and it's a composer package, which is nice, and I'll kind of get into like how I've done that as well. But yeah, you know, you can still go, and at least if you want to play with it, install the plugin into any site or whatever, and start playing with it right away. The documentation is fantastic. I'll just put that out there. I don't think I've actually looked at the documentation for 2.0, even though it exists. Maybe for a couple of things, But overall, once you kind of learn it, what's been nice is that you haven't had to relearn it, which is always great. So this is the WordPress loop in PHP, and I'm sure we're all familiar with it, but I'll kind of walk you through for people at home. This is a unordered list element. We're querying just a post type, very basic, grab inner post, whatever that exists. And then if we've got post, we're going to go ahead and pull out our via a vowel and well. We're going to grab our title, a link to said post, and then end it after, I think by default like 10 posts or something. Nothing too fancy. If there's no post, we'll say sorry, there's no post here, whatever. Reset at the end, and then yeah. So I was kind of asked to gear this a little bit towards beginners, and if you're a beginner, I'd like you just like, what the hell's going on here? Like you just read this. If you know PHP, you still got to figure out what the WordPress parts are, and it's just overall just like kind of a mess. I don't completely hate it, but again, yeah, because I've had to work with it, so I've learned to like it and appreciate it a little bit. But let's say you've got to go then and add a photo or a featured image from your post, or then also make that featured image responsive. Let's say you've got to add in a custom field if you're using ACM or ACM Pro or POS or whatever these days. Once you start to add more things to this, it just becomes a mess. That being said, in Twig, this is the same loop, much cleaner, much nicer. Even if you don't know PHP, like you're a beginner, I'm pretty sure you can parse like, okay, well this is a list item with an anchor element, or an anchor, and then it's got, your post.permalink, post.title. Again, you may not know what that is specifically, but you can probably parse from there if you're a beginner. Okay, that's the title. Permalink must be the link to the article or post or whatever, and then here's my else statement. So again, it's like we've taken this complicated loop here, and we've made it a lot cleaner, a lot easier to read. If you know just basic HTML, you can start to parse what's going on here. So I wanted to take a real world example too. I'm going to show you some more examples later of what I've got. So you've got frontpage.php. You can see best practices. I've commented out some stuff here, and just lots of introduction, because why not? But what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing Timber, I'm creating this context object, and then I'm going to add a couple of things. I've got some things from ACF. I'm giving them a name. It can be any name really, it's arbitrary. I've got a loop here, and I'm calling features, and then I'm going to render in front page.twig. .twig is going to be my view, or where I render my HTML. And this is what I meant earlier when I said, I'm more familiar with WordPress versus my friend who's a Drupal developer could build out the logical parts of like, okay, I know how to like build our post type and grab stuff, whatever. I can build all that and then grab our fields, and then I can hand it off to my colleague who at the same time can be writing just the basic HTML and using whatever he knows of Twig to just start pulling stuff out. So then we've got, I take all this contents here, I create a feature. So one thing I want to point out is you'll see this feature and feature slash pipe slice. One of my favorite things about WordPress is when you want to have two types of, let's just say, arrays of posts. Let's say you have a feature post, and then you've got your first post that's always going to be at the top or something like a banner, and then everything else at the bottom. You usually have to write kind of like two, maybe you don't always have to these days. You usually have to write two calls to the database to get that one post, do some other stuff with WordPress via your array here, and basically say, okay, don't pull that one post, call the rest of those down here. What's nice is I can call them all at once, and then just using what's built in the Twig, I can show you, okay, just give me like this first post, and then give me the rest down here. Which is nice, and then of course Twig also has caching. You don't have to do that every time, thanks. Twig will also cache everything, so it's just way more performant out of the box. And you can just write things that just make more sense. Earlier when I mentioned featured images, so here's a featured image, and I've just got a picture element, my source media stuff. I've done things that allow us to be more responsive, like not relying on WordPress's built-in whatever to handle stuff, although I do that now, but at the time, I could just, if I wanted to be more specific about, we want the image to look this way, or let's say, we want it to be a 16 by 9 on tablets, but we want it to be like, 2 by 1 on mobile devices. You can do that. So it's nice because doing that in WordPress is possible, but good God, it's going to be a pain in the ass. Whereas doing it this way is great. So here's another example here. I wanted to show this Timber context PHP. I'm not going to dive too into like structure, how to structure a Twig theme. But what I like about Timber context PHP is that I can add in all of my logic that isn't based on a page or a route. Let's say I want to have, as an example, is front page, something we all use in WordPress. If it's the front page, we want to have this one thing, let's just, whatever it is, some kind of box or something, or a card. Instead of having to write PHP if it is front page, or look up, because I always forget what the exact function is called, I can just basically add it to this context file that now exists as part of the context object, and I can just go pluck it out at any point. I don't know if I used it here. Oh yeah, look, here it is. So, if not is front page, enable breadcrumbs, and I think that was just like an option in whatever, via ACF, there it is up there, first line. If it's not the front page, and if we've got breadcrumbs turned on, show the breadcrumbs, so that I'm using just some logic to generate the breadcrumbs and HTML. Again, like I said, even if you don't know PHP deeply, I think you can kind of parse what's going on here. If you know some basic HTML. And yeah, again, these are all real world options I've shown. I'm sure there's better ways to do some of this stuff, but hopefully at least it makes sense to like, okay, I'm not a fan of when people show you a thing and then they don't show you like real world examples. These are real world examples. These exist somewhere. So some wins off the bat. The separation of concerns. We get closer to sort of the model view controller structure again. I won't dive deeply into that. That's a little more advanced topic. Some of you all in this room know what that is, but I won't dive too deeply into that. This is a little bit of beginners. But readability and scalability or simplicity. Again, if you don't know anything about PHP, I feel like just looking at a Twig file, you can start to parse, okay, what's going on. Auto escape values. So, hopefully you all, if you're working in PHP or WordPress, you're escaping inputs and values and things that people are adding, like through a form or something. If you're like me and you forgot that exists because Twig does it for you, this just off the bat makes your site way more secure. You don't have to do anything. In fact, from a real world example, I think I've only had one security issue in all the Twig sets that were built, and I think it was actually because of a plugin using PHP. It wasn't even a part of Ribbon Twig. I think I just turned off the plugin and it's like, the issue was fine. It wasn't even a plugin needed. But yeah, it was just funny. It's like, okay, someone flagged me for a security thing. Oh, that's not anything actually written in this framework. Great. I'm going to jump down to template inheritance, just use your dry code. So you can basically really start to parse out components, logic, all sorts of things. You can write your header, you can write your footer. It can be its own file, it can exist, and then you can pull it in through another template file. I'll kind of show more examples here later on. But yeah, it's nice because, again, working with a colleague, we couldn't work together. We were in separate spaces. He was way out in Bastrop, I'm way here in North Austin. We could say, have him write a footer, I can write a header. If he needs to make updates to the whole site, he easily, there's one file he can do it to. Technically you can do that now with WordPress, but it makes it a lot easier to also know what that structure is. And then you can really break down things as tiny as you want, through the whole site. Again, readability, I guess I put that there twice, but whatever, ironically. Performance, again, like I mentioned before, off the bat, just the caching layer that Twig adds is just phenomenal. I think, I didn't put it in this presentation, but when I gave this presentation previously, I had actually, going back to React, adopted this site that had been built by a previous developer, and it was well done. Like, it wasn't a terrible site, but it was a performance hog. I think it took something like 8 seconds to load the whole thing. When I checked in, I can't remember what it's called, but it took a long time. And what's so funny to me is like, I don't know why it took so long. It is React. It should have been like instant, but it wasn't. Rather than kind of deal with this React code, I said, let's just build this twig. You know, one, if I, for whatever reason, leave this company or leave this organization, it'll at least be in some kind of PHP, and people can figure out the rest easier. Whereas like, you know, having to define a React developer, who wants to do that? No offense to React developers, but you know, it's just one of those things. And yeah, performance went from, you know, 8 seconds to like, I think under a second, and it was instant. I really didn't have to do too much. It was great. Transferable skills. I think this is a big one to highlight because right now there's a bunch of WordPress drama. No one knows if WordPress will be around in like a year. I mean, it will be. I think we're all being kind of dramatic by saying it's going to die. But I think one of the biggest things I want to point out, again, real world example, is I haven't really had to work on WordPress in the last year and a half for the most part. I think these days I probably do like a couple of WordPress sites for friends if they need help or if they've got, you know, something they're working on. But I work in Craft CMS these days, which is built in Twig. And it's funny because even though I had never really touched Craft, I was able to just adopt it quickly, figure out, okay, here's how the API works. You know, I know what's going on with the front end because I can read these files, I can read this and parse what's happening. Drupal, I want to say since Drupal 8, they've been using Twig. So even if you aren't a Drupal developer, you can at least start to figure out some of the Drupal front-end stuff, and as you know, some of the Drupal back-end things. So that's huge. And I'll also even say, adopting Twig allowed me to become a better just PHP developer in general, because now, you know, I think object-oriented programming and object stuff in general always kind of escaped me a little bit. I got some of the ideas, but it never really made total sense. And then once I started using more Twig, it allowed me to just kind of gel things. So now it makes sense, and now I get it, and now I'm not totally lost. I pretend I know what I'm talking about sometimes. So transferable skills, super important. If you can learn something and it allows you to go into other tools and use those, I think that's tremendous. So downsides, there's a little bit of a learning curve depending on what you use. I know you mentioned Sage has a learning curve. I would say Timber, the learning curve there wasn't too big. I was at a couple of years in my career by that point, so I was able to kind of gel what was happening. But you know, if you've got someone who's brand new to WordPress, they might have a hard time learning some of this stuff. I think once they get it though, I think they'll be able to just turn out things that are amazing. The loop, the WordPress loop we all know and love is broken. And by that I mean, well, I won't dive too into the loop much, but I'll just say that it's broken. There could be some issues with plugins that rely on the loop, the way they function. I'll be honest, I've yet to really run into that issue. It does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I will say that as I've used more Twig, I've found I rely less on plugins except for ACF Pro, to the point where, yeah, I think the only thing I ever really use is ACF Pro for sure, and the rest could be just if it's something brand new unique. But yeah, it's definitely reduced my plugin usage, which is always appreciated. Native delete functions, I can't remember what I was specifically trying to talk about here, but I'll just simply say that you know, some of the functionality is a little bit broken. You can pull stuff out by using context objects and whatnot. But yeah, again, I've never really had serious issues here using it. And support. I put this one here just because it's always good to think about when you use something or you're new to something, what's the support like out there? I will say that again, the Timber documentation is tremendous. If you go the Timber route, it's fantastic. I rarely have to look at it, but it's there. It's really good. And then of course, you know, I guess Stack Overflow. If you still go there these days, you might get some shit because people are like, "Why aren't you using like native PHP, whatever, WordPress thing?" But you know, you'll be able to kind of start to parse through things, and you know, there's not tons of support out there. There are us Twig and WordPress developers who do exist. We're not alone. You know, but just something to think about. All right, so demo time. So I wanted to show two real world sites that I built in Twig. And what's funny is I didn't plan this, but one site is built using more of your classic editor, and the other one's more built with Gutenberg. So I'll get to show you some Gutenberg Twig stuff too. Yeah, get out of here. So the first thing I want to show off is amityworld.com. So this is a local here in Austin. interior designer, I guess we'll say, for lack of a better term, really just tremendous stuff. I mean, I never have shown my wife this because she wanted our house to look like all this stuff in here. But long story short, this is Twig. I want to say this is Bootstrap 4, and then, we've done a couple of things to make it look nice. I'm not going to show the back end, but a lot of this stuff here is built in ACF Pro, using the classic editor, I think this is what it's called now. And yeah, so I wanted to show up the front page. I think this is just this is a slider, classic slider. I think we're using Blaze, and then of course, this is a block using flexible content block or something in ACF Pro, YouTube video, etc. And yeah, so we kind of got a loop here with some featured topics and stuff that is a slider as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful site. I did not design this site. A friend of mine did it. Laurel, she runs RuckSpec. She's fantastic. But I wanted to show off again real world examples. So let me go ahead and bump this up. I think that's too much. There we go. So here's my front page PHP file. As you can see, not very much logic we've had to write for the front page site. Most of you, if you're new to WordPress, the front page PHP file is kind of like, it's your front page of your site. You can delete it, you don't need it, it's not necessary, but it is nice to just have that control over the front page. I forget where it falls on the template hierarchy stuff, but I know it's pretty high on there. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just calling some post. I actually probably did that. Getting the slider, getting a content, which is again our ACF flexible content type, and then in my front page PHP, or front page Twig file, which I just look for here. I think this doesn't have much stuff on it. Yeah, but yeah, this is a good example of we've just templated out, parsed out things so that it can be as minimal as our Twig files can be as tiny as possible. We've got a slider, we've got flex content. Let me pull up a slider first. It's partial convert. And then, yeah, we're using Swiper actually. These anymore. But yeah, so here's our slider. One of the fun things that I like about Twig, or that I can do in Twig, that you can again do with PHP, it's a little bit more pain in the butt, is I can do this fun thing of okay, we're going to inject a little bit of styles on the front page, or wherever we have this slider, and then we're going to go ahead and grab my background image. Now, I wouldn't do this these days, but it was cool that I could do this then. I can take a background image, grab my, whatever the slider image is, resize it, and then, my crop center, etc. So again, I wouldn't do this now, but it was awesome to do it then because, how do you kind of make a background image slider thing and then make it make sense, and also have it be, how do you make background images be, what's the responsive? You don't, but you can do this. It's kind of hacky, but it works. So a cool thing I can do in Twig, you can totally do it in vanilla PHP, but God, why would you? So there's the slider, and then I think it was flex content, which powers most of the site. So here we go, and again, it's just a big if-else. We probably just done switch, but whatever. Here's all the different types, so that I can, even though I don't know what's really going on here, I can still go into flex content. I can go a level deeper, and then say, okay, here's my claim box, and here's my HTML, and here's some of the bootstrap in there, and then what am I doing in here? Oh, I'm getting a background color, I'm getting some text, getting some kind of link or title. I can start to figure out, okay, well, here's what I'm doing in this. I haven't looked at this in forever, because the first one's actually looked at this in years. But it's, it allows me to just really make minute little changes where needed. Again, here's a call to action we created. If there's a headline, if there's text, if there's links, etc. We're doing all this different stuff. We have all these variables, all these ways we can make the front end view of this thing flexible. And what's cool is, like I said, doing this in vanilla PHP would be atrocious and hardly readable. Doing this in Twig, very readable, very clean. Even if you don't know PHP, you can still kind of figure out, okay, this is what's going on here. So that's Emily Worrell. Do check it out. I mean, she's a fantastic designer. She's crazy expensive if you're thinking of getting her, just FYI. But this team is fun because they actually unlike most sites where you kind of just set it and forget it or whatever, or they want you to build this thing, it's the best thing ever, and then no one ever touches it again. They're actually actively using it. We get, the blog is very active. I think they post on YouTube actively. I know the Wi-Fi here is bad because those images load up instantly. So as a heads up, this is not good Wi-Fi, but no offense to anyone here. But yeah, this is great again because they're just actively doing stuff. I think in the years since this launched, we've only had like 1 or 2 little issues and have done maybe 1 or 2 little feature fixes by now. So yeah, tremendous. It was tremendous work, and I think everyone involved was great. So, okay, so this is a fun one. So this next one is going to be a little hectic, but bear with me. This is Charlie Uniform Tango. Again, I know the Wi-Fi's bad because this is usually the video playing crazy. Let me spin it to play it all. Is it going to do it? Okay, there we go, cool. I guess Chrome, pause. So this is Charlie Uniform Tango. This is a local video production company, for lack of a better term. They also have an office in Dallas, I think. And I think they've been trying to get world-class Dallas video production. I think they've been trying to highlight their Dallas stuff more, hence why they made this change here. So I will just kind of pick on this because I'm not a fan of this approach, but just because of the accessibility reasons. But I still think it looks good. Obviously, it's flashy. I'm sure if you're a more marketing type person at home, this is very exciting to you right now. But what I love about this, and I'll kind of go into this more, we might see more examples of this as I go in, is when I was handed the design for this, you'll notice that the Let's Tango, the Tango text, you can kind of see it, the button, the highlight line here. If I just scroll further down, there are other elements of the page that are like kind of line green, I call it. One of the asks in the design was to have this stuff changeable via page. So I go to another page, I want to have all this stuff become pink instead, or I want it to be, orange, or who knows what. And again, I think we'll see examples of this going around. Okay, now it's not up with that forever. But yeah, as you can see already, there's blue. If I scroll down, it all basically highlights. And what's nice about this, I might be able to show this here, I think, in a minute, is that this is just like a checkbox in the back end when you go to the page, and it just allows you to pick the color you want for all these elements per page. Again, building something like that, page P, doable, kind of a slog, especially once you have to then take whatever, let's just say, whatever you want to call being that variable, and then put it in different parts, and also make it accessible in other components, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Would be kind of a nightmare. But again, with Twig, doable, and very easy to pull off. And hopefully I'll get to be able to show you how I pull it off here in a second. What's also funny too is that, yeah, this is all using Gutenberg. So I want to say most of the content here between this header and footer is just block stuff built in Twig. Again, I'll just show some of that in a second. But we tried to make this as flexible as possible because basically the company wanted to not be tied too much to a rigid whatever rigid design for the page. And then also the SEO person they hired is kind of their goal on everything on the front page basically. So we're kind of, okay, we'll try and work within that. What's also nice too, I'm going to show this off here. I think I'm going to show this in a second. Okay, so these FAQ boxes, I want to say at the time the details element was kind of newish, or maybe more well known. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's just an in-browser way of actually building these collapsible accordions. So normally you'd have to, like, back in the day, build this out in some Diptopia, and then use some JavaScript or something to, like, allow you to have this interaction. Whereas now, it's literally just like a little bit of HTML you can write. And what was cool was like, okay, I can then take that, use it within a block, and also make it a little easier to manage on the back end. And this all makes sense, I promise, in a second. So here we go. This is my. But yeah, I don't even get to build a front page thing because we tried to make it that flexible. We're not going to try and tie anything down. Hey, let me go to the page here. Yeah, here's our page template, and then all we're doing is we're just rendering page.twig. And then at page.twig, I think there's just a thing to like render whatever blocks you pick. So you'll get to see all this block stuff in a second. Here it is. Yeah, post content. That's it. That's our entire, that's all we need for the theme. A lot of the magic is happening here. I want to say, not in our views, but in our blocks folder. And this is, of course, where we keep all of our blocks for Gutenberg. So, let me just see. Pull up. Again, sorry, it's been so long since I looked at this, but figured I'd just do this live with you all. There is a library that we use to basically allow it so that we could, I think it's this one, have this simple API call, where we could just have a title, have a description, add a category, all this stuff. Normally you have to like do a bunch, like anyone who's familiar with building Google blocks, you have to write so much damn code just to get that simple part that's commented out right now. But using a certain FPM package, that's a composer package, actually. Using a certain composer package, you can just create a block like this, and now you can go start writing your HTML and have this section, the CTA block, and another call to action block, just kind of get that out of the blue, which has our background color, headline, etc. So yeah, I mean, it's tremendous. Let me see if I can pull up that exact composer package just for you all. There it is. Yeah, I think it's just called Timber ACF blocks. So if nothing else, for those of you who work in Timber or Twig and Gutenberg, this is a tremendous package. This allows you just, like I said, create this little bit of code or whatever, by a little bit of stuff here, and now you've got a block you can play with the Twig. Tremendous, highly recommended. If nothing else you take from this night. So going back to our blocks here, that's how we're registering blocks apply. Going back to our blocks here, yeah, here's our slider again, because they're all those sliders. As you can see, we're doing much of the same we did before. It looks like, yeah, instead of using background images, we're using Blaze slider. And yeah, it looks like we're using Tailwind. So fun trick for fun people at home. And instead of doing the background image thing like I mentioned before, just use grid. Just have your grid, do one big grid, and have everything on top of each other. It looks nice. That's what all this is. I think if I did a inspector on this, it's literally just one big grid and then another big grid on top, and I can just kind of shift things around. Also nice because it's much easier for responsive. I think on mobile, let me just see if it's in this file here. Yeah, I think on mobile we just basically replaced the video with images, so that's also nice because it's a little more better for responsive people who've got crappy data plans or something, or terrible Wi-Fi, like you might have here. No offense. But yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of cool looking at it now because I haven't looked at it in so long, but it's great how we didn't really have to do too much. Now we did spend a lot of time in design, obviously QA, and still have to build this stuff out. But it's great how using Twig allows us to just develop stuff so fast that you can do this without Twig. I'm just gonna keep saying that. But using Twig allows us to develop so much faster. And designer has me design instead of going, what the hell? I'm like, okay, I can do this. Sure. I'm already starting to picture how this is laid out. This is just a simple fancy paragraph. I think we attached some classes to it. I can't remember what this is for. Kind of sort of look at it now, but there you go. Here's our FAQ, our details element, and then our summary. And this is the whole thing that allows us to create the accordion. We have no JavaScript, nothing. I just toss this in, I've got an accordion. It's great. Let's see here. So I want to backtrack a little bit. This is not me trying to sell this. I just want to point this out. If you're at home and maybe you want to kind of play with something now, this is Bordered Eagle. Bordered Eagle was a theme I mentioned way back at the beginning when I said, hey, I built this theme over the weekend before I found out I had a site that was going to be like, oh, it needs to be done in 30 days. We don't know what it looks like or how it's going to be in it. At the time, and I haven't touched this forever, at the time it was just a Twig theme, Twig starter theme with Bootstrap 4. Now it's Twig with, I want to say it's using Composer now to install Timber. it's got Webpack, it's got Tailwind. So a pretty good flexible starter. I'm not trying to sell this at all. I think it's just something that if you've got some time and want to play with it, maybe you're like mid-level, go through this README. I'm trying to put as much stuff as possible, not just for people at home, but for myself, so I know what's going on. And then here's all the resources, of course, that are pretty great. I will point out for the Timber video tutorials, I'm not about doing this at home because there aren't many out there. They do exist, but they're very old. But what's nice is that even though they're old, they're still pretty relevant for the most part. It hasn't changed too much. When I started using Timber, it was like a 1 point something plugin, now it's a 2.0, and moving from one to the other was not a huge nightmare, which is kind of nice when you can move into something new where it's not a nightmare. But yeah, this is Border Beagle. You can find this leorgosolid/border-beagle. If you want to check it out, I'm trying to share it in the WordPress Slack. If you're not in there, check it out for later. Let's see here. So yeah, I'm gonna just mention some links and resources. This is, of course, I've linked to the guide. There's a fun article on CSS tricks about using Twig. I think a lot of what he covers, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, this talk. But it is kind of a fun read. I want to say the article is kind of old now, but much of what's in there is relevant. And it really just makes you appreciate it more, being able to have something you can make really flexible themes with. Don't Make Me Think. I'm highlighting this, it's more of a UX UI book, but I love it a lot because it's a lot of it's kind of changed my approach to how I also do development, which is if I can take a tool and build something with it, and it's easy enough for another dev to come in and understand, like my Drupal friend, then I think that's a win, and I think that should be something we'll all try to do. That's why I made that Border Beagle thing. I wanted something that I could hand to someone who may not be a deep level, knowledgeable person on WordPress, but they can at least start to parse what's going on, and be able to kind of really make nice sites with it. So, yeah, that's everything. I don't know, Q&A time?
I was looking into Twig. I started using it in 2012 maybe.
Wow,
and I was looking, it was created in 2009.
Yeah.
It has 15 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
And having this compatibility between the old version to the new one is something super nice because I'm using Truth Sage, and I'm still using the version like the old version. I don't want to say how long because when I tried to do it with the new one, the site crashed, and I don't remember what I did inside, and I don't have the time to rebuild everything, and then we keep it there. It works. So when we use NVM for change the new version, we go back to the original version, everything compiled, go live.
Yeah, I mean, actually, funny enough, before I started talking, the craft came up, and I was talking about this migration from craft 2 to craft 3. And the funny thing is that the view part is fine for the most part. There's a couple of things in the template files that we've had to change, but for the most part, we haven't really had to touch much of the template code, which is nice. It's mostly just like all the nightmare stuff in the back end that we kind of deal with craft. So yeah, it is kind of cool that you can do that. You just move everything. I'm just gonna move all these Twig files into this, and then figure it out later.
Yeah, that's super valuable. And thank you for sharing all the details and all your findings and experience. Because, for example, like the possibility to use Timber with the Composer extension to create blogs, that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's really something. I feel like I kind of did enough of a deep dive, but there's obviously so much more.
Maybe you can prepare another presentation. Like how to build blog using Twigs and Boodle.
Yeah, I can go into that more, but yeah, you can build blocks with it. When I figured that out, when I saw that Composer package, I was like, oh, well, hell yeah, this is great. Even though these days I kind of do mostly use a full site editor or Gutenberg for the most part, I still make a skeleton Twig theme so that if I ever need to do this or use this, it's there, it's available for me. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I have clients of different kinds.
Yeah.
Elementor, full site editing, coding, and then I need to have like all the different kind of options.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, cool. Yeah, machine learning. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I guess we can end here. I'm gonna close the live stream. I don't know how you have the live stream.
I think I need to ask.
Here, I'll text Elon right now.
Will you be sharing the slide deck?
So yeah, I can share the slide deck. You know what, I'll go, so meetup.com, did you find it with meetup.com or I'll go to meetup.com and I'll add the slide deck as I'll link to the slide deck and all these other resources in the comments. But you can obviously meetup.com. If you find the WordPress Slack, I think it's just WordPress Austin. I'll also share stuff in there. I won't be able to do that tonight, so don't look for tonight. It'll happen sometime tomorrow. But I promise.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Thank you very much for
Oh, sure, yeah.
all the knowledge and all the details.
Stop sharing. Privacy back.
That's all here.
I don't know who that's.
I think it's the slide that I have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, sorry.
So, I think we ended. If no have more questions, super.
Yeah, we're gonna get out.
Nice to meet
For
you.
coming and
Yeah.
I want to
Did you park upstairs?